Sue Bird's Paige Bueckers' comment set off a firestorm, but the Caitlin Clark effect is bigger than any debate. It only took one line to light up the WNBA conversation. Sue Bird, a four-time champion and one of the most trusted voices the league has ever produced, suggested that Paige Bueckers should be followed and covered in a way that is similar to what we saw with Caitlin, arguing that Paige's popularity has been underrated. Coming from anyone else, it might have passed as simple admiration. Coming from Sue Bird, on a polished platform, during a season already reshaped by Caitlin Clark's presence, it landed like a headline. What followed was swift and loud. Fans, analysts, and former players spent the next 48 hours debating whether Bird was simply celebrating Bueckers or subtly undercutting Clark. The optics mattered more than the intent. Bird's words were delivered by someone who, for years, has been treated as a voice of record, an ambassador whose takes don't just sit in feeds, they shape them. So when she said Paige Bueckers should be covered like Caitlin Clark, many heard it as a correction to the current story of the WNBA. And to Clark supporters, it sounded like a swipe at a star who hasn't needed help from anyone to command attention. Let's be honest about the context. Caitlin Clark didn't edge her way into the spotlight. She detonated into it. She broke attendance records, pushed teams into larger arenas, sent jersey sales through the roof, and turned regular season nights into appointment television. Her effect has been measurable from the moment she debuted. The Indiana Fever went from a rebuilding story to the center of the league, averaging north of 16,000 fans per game and drawing national audiences that spiked TV viewership across networks. If you want to know why she gets the coverage she gets, the numbers give you the answer before the emotions do. That's exactly why Bird's comment hit such a nerve. You cannot will or wish another player into that level of cultural gravity. You can't ask fans to respond to someone's name the way they respond to Clark's just because it feels more balanced. The audiences decide. And right now, they've decided. Bird's full thought was more nuanced than a pull quote. People forgot how popular and how engaging Paige is and how people are drawn to her, she said. She should be followed and covered in a way that is similar to what we saw with Caitlin because that's how popular she is. It's not to compare them and it's not to diminish Caitlin. That's not what it's about. It's just about talking about Paige. The clarification mattered. But by then, the internet had already split into camps. Those who felt Bird was lifting Paige Bueckers up, and those who heard a diminishing of Caitlin Clark's climb. The league's history complicated it. Bird is a UConn icon. Bueckers is a UConn legend in her own right. The WNBA has long faced criticism, fair or not, that certain pipelines and pedigrees get more oxygen than others. Whether you agree with that or not, those optics stick in fans' minds. To many, the message wasn't Paige is special, which is undeniably true. It was heard as Caitlin's spotlight should be shared, which felt like scolding a fan base for choosing what they already love. And yet, two things can be true. Paige Bueckers is a magnetic player who has drawn crowds and attention at every level. Her combination of balance, poise, shot-making, and court vision made her must-see viewing before she ever turned pro. Injuries slowed her momentum at key moments, and team context complicates how her talent translates to broad national coverage. But the outpouring of interest is real. At the same time, there's no honest way to flatten the gap between what Paige has done so far and what Caitlin has already done, almost overnight, for the WNBA. Here's the part Clark's critics rarely enjoy hearing. Nothing about her rise has felt manufactured. No committee reflexively decided she would be the one. The crowds came first. Then the ratings. Then the schedules adjusted. Then the inventory sold out. As one executive put it privately this summer, the league didn't drive demand, it struggled to keep up with it. At peak moments this season, TV audiences climbed by more than 20% year over year, teams shifted games into bigger buildings when the Fever came to town, and social engagement around Clark's highlights often dominated cross-sport timelines. That wasn't a media campaign. That was gravity. It's why phrases like must-see TV cling so easily to her name. Fans check start times when the Fever are in town. People rearrange dinner plans. Opposing arenas hum well before tip because the building is full 30 minutes early. In an entertainment business, those are the signals that outpull any commentary war. It's not about who deserves it. It's about who can't be ignored. That doesn't mean Paige Bueckers isn't a draw. It means drawing and detonating aren't the same. When Paige exploded for 44 points against the Sparks, Hardcore Hoops fans saluted it as one of the season's purest scoring clinics. But it didn't leap beyond WNBA Twitter into full-day national sports talk the way Clark's routine logo 3 or cross-court laser can. That isn't favoritism. It's reach. It's the force multiplier that separates star from sensation. Team results sharpen the contrast. Indiana, a franchise stuck in the wilderness for years, walked into relevance with Clark, then stayed there. The Fever pushed into the playoffs and reclaimed a presence in a market where postseason basketball has a tradition and an appetite. The Dallas Wings, by contrast, slid into the bottom of the standings. When a team sits near the basement, even brilliant individual nights can fade after a day of clips. It's not fair. It's how sports work. Winning is the tide that carries performances into bigger waters. The Wings can benefit from Paige Bueckers' best nights and still struggle to move the needle until the results change. That's part of what frustrated Clark supporters when Bird's comment turned the day into Paige versus Caitlin. The point of Clark's rise has never been to eclipse everyone else. It's been to make the stage bigger, wider, louder. She didn't diminish Aya Wilson. She helped put more eyes on Aya's dominance. She didn't crowd out Angel Reese. She boosted a rookie rivalry that brought millions more into the conversation. She didn't overshadow Aaliyah Boston, Lexi Hull, or Kelsey Mitchell. She made them household names on national platforms that go far beyond Indiana. That's leverage you can't assign in a meeting. It shows up in search trends, sold-out sections, and jersey back orders. When fans say you can't force a rivalry, this is what they mean. If the coverage around Paige Bueckers shifts into the lane Caitlin built, the audience will accept it when the moments match it. Until then, constant comparisons read as an attempt to correct a reality fans already chose. There were other flashpoints that revealed the disparity in reactions. Earlier this season, when Paige nudged Kelsey Plum on a deadball bump, the clip barely lasted a news cycle beyond WNBA circles. Flip that scenario. Imagine Clark involved in the same contact, and it likely runs for a week on talk shows, with 100 different angles of outrage and defense. That's not fairness or unfairness. It's the symptom of uneven reach. One player's controversies, big or small, explode. Another's barely ripple. Critics of the attention around Clark sometimes argue that it's not about basketball, that it's about something else. Marketability, image, or the league's hunger for a breakout star. But numbers are stubborn. Clark broke dozens upon dozens of marks in her rookie season and helped flip a franchise from irrelevance to relevance in under a year. The Fever's average attendance topped 16,000. TV windows routinely trended when the Fever played. Indiana's brand, and the WNBA ace, expanded into spaces it hasn't lived in since the league's earliest pop culture waves. You don't get that without performance tied to personality. The product and the person met the moment. None of that means Paige Bueckers doesn't deserve attention. She does. She plays an elegant, economical brand of basketball that coaches love and hoop nerds obsess over. Mid-range craft, stop-start pacing, an understanding of angles. If you love the game, you love watching her solve possessions. But if you're asking why that hasn't translated into the same mass-market energy, the strongest answers live outside the craft. They live in the collective pop the league has found with Clark and the Fever, in the winning, in the way a single player can tilt the national conversation and pull in casual fans who weren't watching at all a year ago. That's why Bird's comment touched a nerve. It sounded like a redistribution plan for something that can't be rationed. Attention isn't a salary cap. You don't break it into equal shares and send the checks. It pools where it pools. As Clark's fans are quick to remind anyone who wants to move it by willpower, the audience will go where it wants to go. And in this moment, it's going to Caitlin first, then to everyone she brings with her. There's a business reality underneath this that matters for the league's future. Indiana's sellouts and TV hits translated into tangible growth. More national windows, more primetime slots, and a different kind of mainstream conversation around the WNBA as a whole. Sponsors and networks react to that. They plan budgets and build schedules around it. The league has been waiting a long time for a star to move all the needles at once. Attendance, ratings, merchandise, and social engagement. Clark did it this season, sometimes without playing. When she posted an injury update, it outperformed other players' game highlights. That's rare air anywhere in sports. The cultural piece is just as important. Fans don't merely track Clark's box scores. They track her pre-game fits, her short answers to officials, her chemistry with teammates, and the way she celebrates big moments. She's relatable and aspirational at once, a bridge between die-hard basketball watchers and audiences who come for the vibe, then stay for the talent. When people call her a global brand in the making, that's what they mean. If you don't see it yet, you probably aren't going to be convinced by any stat line. You either feel the wave or you don't. As for Paige Bueckers, the fairest outcome is the simplest one. Let her story breathe without forcing it into someone else's timeline. If she goes on a run, if her team turns results into momentum, if the big nights start stringing together into big weeks and months, the coverage will surge. It always does when performance meets stakes. That's not a hope. That's how sports culture works. Angel Reese knows it. Aya Wilson knows it. Nafisa Collier knows it. The league is healthier when multiple stars are shining at once, not when one is used as a counterbalance to the other. So where does that leave Sue Bird's comment? Somewhere between sincere praise and unintended provocation. Bird likely meant what she said at face value. Paige Bueckers is incredibly popular in her own right, and coverage shouldn't shrink when Caitlin Clark isn't on the floor. But saying it the way she did, where she did, guaranteed it would be interpreted as a critique of the present. The public doesn't weigh nuance. It reads real-time hierarchies. When you speak into that reality, you either reinforce it or you're heard as challenging it. The good news for the WNBA is that the debate itself is a sign of growth. A few years ago, a retired legend offering an opinion about attention share would not have kicked up a two-day storm across mainstream outlets. Now it does. That means more eyes, more ears, and more passion. The WNBA doesn't need a contrived rivalry to benefit from that. It just needs the room to let multiple stories play out truthfully. Caitlin Clark's story is already clear. She raised the ceiling in her first season, pushed Indiana back into the postseason conversation, and carried the Fever and the league into spaces they haven't lived in for years. Paige Bueckers' story is still being written. If she and the Wings find a groove, if the results catch up with the skill, the conversation will follow. Not because someone said it should, but because the audience will feel it. That's the lesson under all the noise. True stars don't need crowning ceremonies or corrections. The fans do that work on their own. They're doing it for Caitlin Clark right now. And if Paige Bueckers takes the next steps, they'll do it for her too, without anyone needing to say a word. What's next for each player will shape the off-season conversation. Clark's rehab and the Fever's roster building will drive headlines, especially after a season where Indiana's playoff push became a centerpiece of league coverage. Dallas, meanwhile, faces a different sort of challenge, turning Bueckers' individual brilliance into team results that make the Wings a draw beyond diehards. That's how Paige's highlights become national talking points instead of niche appreciation. That's how a "she deserves more" conversation becomes unnecessary because the coverage answers itself.